This one episode actually ruined Patrick Star's character and everything the writers have tried to build him as. And it's not the episode you think. If someone asks you, what is Patrick's worst episode? You'd probably point to the obvious ones, like Stuck in the Ringer, Yours, Mine, and Mine, maybe Pet Sitter Pat. And sure, those are bad, genuinely painful to sit through. I'm not gonna defend any of them. But this video isn't about Patrick's worst episode. In fact, the episode I'm talking about, The Card from Season 6, is not even close to being the worst. And yet, it's the one that marked the change. The one that drew the line between the Patrick we loved and whatever came after. By the end of this video, I don't think you'll be able to watch any Patrick episode the same way again, just like me. So let's talk about what actually happens in the episode. The story is about SpongeBob wanting a rare Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy trading card, number 54, a super rare, platinum, holographic, animated talking card, of which there are only 5 in existence.
Platinum hologram animated talking card, number 54.
He spends all his money buying pack after pack, trying to find it, no luck. Patrick, who is at the same store buying a counting book, buys the very last pack on a whim. He doesn't even care about the cards, but of course, he gets the elusive number 54 on the first try. Now right here, this is already classic Patrick energy. The guy who doesn't even try gets the thing the guy who tried hardest couldn't get. Yeah, just like he did with Rocky that one time in The Great Snail Race. And for Patrick, that's right on brand for his character. That's the kind of lovable cosmic unfairness that made Patrick charming. But then the episode just keeps going. SpongeBob tells Patrick it's a rare card and explains how valuable it is. He wanted Patrick to treat it with a lot of care, just like he would. But of course, Patrick spends the rest of the episode just being so painfully oblivious, constantly putting the card in danger of being damaged. Like walking it through a mud puddle or dropping it in the fire. He even goes to great lengths to damage the card himself by using the card as a toothpick. He pries open the lock to get inside his house, and at one point, he uses it as a spatula to flip Krabby Patties. Yeah, and so for most of the episode, SpongeBob is just running around in a panic, throwing himself in front of every new disaster, while Patrick just keeps going from one catastrophic situation to the next, completely unbothered. The card did get destroyed by the end of the episode, after taking constant damage for almost 11 minutes. And now, SpongeBob's crying in the corner because the card is gone, and there's no way for him to get one for himself because Patrick said he would give it to him after the day ends, right? And the only reason this doesn't end in a complete tragedy is because, surprise, the pack Patrick bought had all 5 number 54 cards in it. So Patrick hands the remaining ones over to SpongeBob. Well, 3 of them. So after watching it for the first time, you could say it's a happy ending on the surface. Sure, SpongeBob gets his cards, everything works out. Except nothing about watching this episode feels happy. In fact, it feels exhausting, mean-spirited even. It feels wrong in a way that's hard to immediately put your finger on. And then Patrick opens his mouth and puts his finger on it for you. That's what it feels like. And that's not even the worst part of the episode, because right there in the middle of all this chaos, there's a moment where SpongeBob finally catches up to Patrick and asks him why he does all these things. Why do you keep putting the card in danger when you know how much it means to me? And Patrick just says this.
SpongeBob, you can't always expect my usual brand of stupidity. I like to mix it up.
I need you to sit with that for a second, because on the first watch, most people hear that and just laugh. We're on season 6, and maybe Patrick is starting to be overly aware for a second. But when you actually stop and think about what he just said, that means he knows he's stupid. He knows SpongeBob expects it, and he's telling us out loud that he actively chooses to vary it up, as if it's something he performs on a daily basis and adjusts depending on the situation. Which means everything that happened in this episode wasn't Patrick being oblivious. It was a choice after all. And for better or worse, that changes everything. Not only this episode, but every episode before it, too. Now, forgive me for bringing this topic up every time we talk about post-movie Patrick, but early Patrick wasn't just dumb. It was one of his traits, not his entire character. And he was dumb in a very specific way that the writers understood completely. If you pay close attention to the first 3 seasons, for the most part, there are really only 2 ways they ever used his stupidity in a plot. The first one is what I would call the split-second brainless moment. It's when Patrick does something stupid and something goes wrong in an instant.
That's not disturbing. This is disturbing. Hi there, SpongeBob.
And then they just go off, continuing where they left off. The joke doesn't stay for the whole episode, and it's really not connected to anything malicious, it just happens. Well, most of the time. Whether it's asking, is mayonnaise an instrument? In Band Geeks, or making fun of squirrels in One Squirrel, the scene will move on in no time, because everyone knows it's just a guy whose brain occasionally goes offline for a few seconds. Meanwhile, the second one, it's more serious. There are some episodes where Patrick's flaw is the actual focus for the whole plot, where his stupidity or his selfishness or his jealousy drives the story forward, like Big Pink Loser or Rockabye Bivalve. And while he's being childish or maybe even a jerk in those episodes, Patrick comes around at the end. He learns something from it and won't do it again in the future. Maybe. I mean, Patrick himself is not known as a character who loves to make a big apology. More often than not, it's just a small moment of genuine feeling that kind of cuts through everything, but it's always there. In Valentine's Day, he nearly destroys the carnival out of jealousy over presents. But underneath that is a real love for SpongeBob that just got twisted by insecurity. In Dumped, he's cold about SpongeBob's heartbreak over Gary, but it turns out he wasn't even choosing Patrick in the first place. And in Rockabye Bivalve, he's a terrible parent and an even worse partner, but by the end, there's at least an acknowledgement that something went wrong. My point is, you could forgive Patrick for being terrible in an episode because you always understood why he was terrible. There was always a human emotion underneath it, even if Patrick himself couldn't fully articulate it. Now, you might argue that there are some episodes where Patrick has shown to plan something or intentionally be mean to SpongeBob in some way. We had a few episodes like those in the golden seasons as well, ones like I'm with Stupid or even Secret Box. The thing is, they're always teasing us with the uncertainty of the assumption, or simply because the plot gives Patrick the road to go there. Actually, let me put it this way. On the surface, Secret Box is a simple episode. Patrick has a box with a secret inside, and SpongeBob spends the whole episode trying to figure out what it is. Patrick refuses. SpongeBob eventually sneaks in at night and opens it, only to find an empty box with a piece of string, and he feels terrible about violating Patrick's trust. But then the episode shows you what's actually hiding behind the secret flap, an embarrassing photo of SpongeBob at the Christmas party. Now, that takes planning. That takes a level of deliberate deception that doesn't really fit the purely innocent dum-dum version of Patrick. But here's what's interesting about that. Patrick never uses the photo, at least in the episode. He never threatens SpongeBob with it, never shows it to anyone, he just has it. And the episode never really commits to the why part. We never find out why he has it, or why he teased SpongeBob in the first place. So you're left with this uncomfortable half answer. Maybe he's secretly a little devious. Maybe the picture is actually some kind of story behind it. The story never tells you which one. The story only suggests that Patrick only keeps that photo to himself for any personal uses, I guess, which means he just likes to be on the edge, teasing SpongeBob to be as close as possible to the secret without ever really revealing it, by leading him to a false conclusion. Then there's I'm with Stupid, a story about when Patrick's parents are coming to visit, and he's afraid his parents are gonna think he's a fool. So they agreed to have SpongeBob pretend to be dumb so Patrick looks smart by comparison. However, Patrick takes it way too far. He really blurred the line between making himself look smart and downright making a fool of someone.
I mean, I've heard of barrel-chested, but never box-chested.
Now, the episode explains this as Patrick just getting carried away, and forgetting the plan. And maybe that's true, but there's a good chance that Patrick knew exactly what he was doing and just enjoyed it, a little bit too much. I think the same could be said with Driven to Tears and Rule of Dumb. The silver lining here is that there's this story about the world giving Patrick access to some kind of power in the plot. This gives us an understanding that, yeah, Patrick is a kid at heart and mind, so when you give him power beyond his comprehension, a fatal mistake is guaranteed. But the card doesn't do any of that. This episode was just confirming he's being an ass on purpose, as if telling us he was never kind or even cared in the first place. Is it just because it feels good to make people suffer? Especially SpongeBob and Squidward? I mean, Patrick just looks you directly in the eye and says, "Yeah, I'm a jerk. All right, so what?" And I never felt more betrayed than that. There's a concept I came across that I think perfectly describes what the card accidentally confirms about Patrick. Someone on the YouTube comments section called it the Peter Griffin effect. And if you've watched Family Guy, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There's a specific episode called Petarded, where Peter finds out he's technically mentally disabled. And from that point forward, he starts using it as an excuse. He realized he has a get-out-of-jail-free card. He can do whatever he wants, cause whatever damage he wants, and people will either feel too guilty to call him out, or assume there's no point because he doesn't know any better. The stupidity suddenly becomes a shield for these characters, and not in a good way. I believe at some point, we don't know exactly when, Patrick figured out the same thing. Everyone in Bikini Bottom already expects him to be an idiot. SpongeBob expects it, the whole city expects it. So anything Patrick does gets filtered through that assumption first. If something goes wrong because of Patrick, well, that's just Patrick being Patrick. No point in getting mad, no point in holding him accountable, he just doesn't know any better.
You can't always expect my usual brand of stupidity. I like to mix it up.
He does know better. He knows exactly how people see him. And he's telling us consciously, deliberately, the stupidity isn't something that happens to Patrick anymore. It's just something Patrick does. It means every time Patrick caused damage and walked away with zero consequences, was that really obliviousness? Or was it someone who learned very early that being the dumb one means never having to say you're sorry? And look, I want to be fair here and give Patrick the benefit of the doubt. There are two ways to read this. Either Patrick has been performing the whole time, the charm was always real, but the stupidity was always at least partially a choice, which is dark, or, and this is maybe slightly more generous, Patrick genuinely started out as the lovable idiot, but somewhere along the way, he had his petarded moment. He realized how people saw him, and instead of pushing back against it, he leaned in. Because it was easier. Because it got him what he wanted, because nobody expects anything from the dumb guy. Either way, the result is the same. This might not be the episode to showcase his worst extreme jerk character traits in 11 minutes. I think Stuck in the Ringer or Yours, Mine, and Mine is worse in that context. But this one kills whatever Patrick is trying to do in the first 3 seasons alone. The Patrick we meet in the card feels like he's not the same Patrick we used to know. And that ruined everything for me. Now, when you go back and watch Valentine's Day or Dumped, you really wonder, was he always doing this? Was the friendship ever real? Or was it all just a very convincing performance from someone who figured out very early that being the dumb one is the safest position in any room? I don't have a clean answer for that, and honestly, I don't think the show does either, which might be the worst part of all. What I do know is that after the card, the writers stopped asking the question entirely. They stopped leaving room for the uncertainty. Episode after episode, Patrick's dumbness is just a plot device rather than a character trait. The card didn't just ruin Patrick going forward, it recontextualized everything that came before. And I genuinely wish I could unsee it. But speaking of characters in the show that are hiding something underneath the surface, there's one we've been circling around for a while now on this channel, that nobody has ever fully cracked him. And the last time, I left you with a question about him that I promised I'd come back to answer. Gary's Paradox. Turns out the answer was hiding in a modern episode that most people scrolled past without thinking twice. And once you see it, you won't be able to unsee that either. That video is right here. Go watch it next, and I'll see you on the next dive.